Hi everyone and welcome along to this week's Quick Fix. I get asked a lot if I will teach a simple country cottage painting, and I thought, well, you know what, it doesn't get more simple than the Quick Fix, so let's have a go at trying it in this quick little tutorial section. So you watch that back, see how I create the three uprights, then get one end in a triangle, two horizontals, and join it up, and lo and behold, you've got a lovely little cottage. And then I can start to add shapes to make it just a little bit more sort of detailed and interesting. We'll pop a door in, maybe a window or two. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to paint around it. We're going to build up a wash around it, creating a sort of sense of almost like negative space, which will create the cottage itself. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to get some sap green and some Payne's grey, and I'm going to begin by painting a few trees around the side, but we also need a bit of green gold as well to sort of help with that, because we need to sort of build up a sort of landscape around the back. So I've got a size 6 brush. I'm just going to paint sort of up to the edge of the cottage, and what I'm doing is sort of angling the brush quite low to the page and sort of creating a bit of a landscape behind it. So I'm going to take a bit of the darker green colour, and essentially I'm just sort of creating land, and then so I'm painting up and around, starting with some lighter colours first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bit of a hill coming down. So this cottage is sort of kind of in the mountains, really. So you can see we're building this scene by painting around the cottage, and then we can maybe create some slightly sort of craggy hillside by just, instead of doing straight lines, now we'll do some slightly wobbly mountainous ones. And then coming down around the cottage itself, this is where I'm going to get a bit more Payne's grey in the mix, because this house has got a presence in this countryside scene, which is causing sort of shadow around it. And then just a little bit more sort of Payne's grey and green gold, sorry, down in the front. Just keeping it, angling that brush, sort of angling it low to the page and placing in a few extra swathes of the green. So you can see from doing that we've created a world in which our cottage exists, and I'm now going to pop a bit of sky in. The sky will have a bit of Payne's grey and a bit of cobalt blue deep, and I'm going to again sort of angle my brush low to the page and end up with a sort of bit of dry brushing, which gives us a sense of a few clouds. I'm not going sort of too close to the mountain just yet, but now it's sort of dried up nice enough. that extra little bit of colour just underneath some of the unpainted spaces just gives the clouds a bit more of a sort of a sense of place in the piece. Now I can start actually putting in a few trees into the landscape as well. So I'm going to take some more of my sap green, and this is sort of a little damp, but it's dried up quite nicely so that I can just sort of dab in tree branch foliage, and it'll sort of feather the tiniest bit but not anything too far, so it gives a wonderful tree effect. And just keep it nice and crisp up by the cottage. And we'll do another few over here. Gosh, the rain is pouring down here, and it's August now. It's meant to be the summer. What's going on? A little bit of Payne's grey. And then what we can do is take a bit of burnt sienna and a bit of Payne's grey just to darken it down, still keeping it essentially brown, but just much darker. And we can send some branches up through the gaps, which is quite a cool little trick. It's one of my favourite watercolour painting techniques just because it looks so cool. And then really blend it down into that landscape. And do the same with the other one. Now our cottage is situated in the landscape, we can paint it. So I've got some buff titanium mixed with yellow ochre here. And in fact, I'm just going to paint over the window and over the door as well, because it's being, you know, really simply done, but I'm also just being quite rough with it, a bit dry brushing, not worrying too much. And now I'm going to take some moon glow and I'm going to just edge it like that. And I'm going to do the same with the chimney. And we're going to let that dry. Having let that dry, I'm now going to do the same on the side. This time my moon glow is going to just be on the top. And then for the roof, well, it's up to you what kind of colour you want. I think I'll go for a burnt sienna. So I said it's pretty rustic, my cottage. And then once I've sort of got that on, I'm going to roughly sort of create a bit of a sense of like horizontal tiles just here and there. And then I get a bit of moon glow whilst I'm doing it. A bit more burnt sienna as well. And then these little sort of end pieces, just sort of do with them what you will. but there is a sort of potential for another bit of detail, and just a bit of shadow around the chimney there. And now, so with some Payne's Grey, I am going to create a little set of windows in my little box I drew in. And then might sort of pop a little sort of frame around it, a little bit of a windowsill underneath. And then for the door we'll do like a rustic country door, so I'm just sort of creating like a plank effect with brown and then with some shadow. And just sort of top it off. Oops, a bit of fluff. With a bit of Payne's Grey. And I think the sort of chimney on the top there, a little bit of Payne's Grey as well. So whilst we just wait for things to dry on the windows and house and things, I'm just going to take a bit of sort of sap green and do a few little sort of plants in the garden. A bit of green gold as well won't go amiss because it'll show up on top of the stonework. And you could always do a little sort of climbing plants of coming up around the cottage. Just makes it look a little bit prettier, a little bit less bleak. And play around with your brush strokes. It doesn't all have to be lots of dabs. It could be nice sort of grasses like that. And then with a slightly bigger brush, you can add in a few little bushes sort of nearer the front. Just to frame it a little bit more. But yeah, sometimes if you just want to sort of capture something in the landscape, it's all about being a bit more expressive and sort of energetic with your brush. And this is a really good exercise for trying that if you are normally more the kind of person who, like me, does precise work. So to finish off, I'm just going to do a tiny bit of sort of dilute shadow just over the door, over the window. And there we have a simple country cottage.